Good morning, everybody. I apologize for those in Florida that are having to get up at an ungodly hour, likewise in Mexico or New York. I apologize. For those that are curious, the photo of me carrying those wrenches was during the days I was the operations manager at Diamond Mountain. That's just one of my wife's favorite photographs of me. The other thing to just briefly mention is the music you hear playing is some of my soundtrack collection. I have probably over 100 or more soundtracks from various movies that I like. So I thought I'd share that with you guys. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So if you know them how to make the mudra for offering the mandala, please do. Here is the great earth, filled with the smell of incense, covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, the four continents, wearing a jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayame. I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of the goodness that I do in giving and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of the goodness that I do in giving and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of the goodness that I do in giving and the rest, may I reach Buddha. I will reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. Okay, we're going to start off with a meditation. So please get comfortable. Close your eyes. And I'd like you to do 2 10-breath rounds of breathing, trying to keep focused and not think of anything else when you're doing it. If you do get distracted, start counting again. I'll count 2 sets of 10 breaths, and then we'll start the meditation. So first we need to do the preliminaries. So check your posture. Check your legs, your shoulders, heads level, eyes lowered or closed, spine straight. If you need to sit in the chair, that's perfectly okay. Now go for refuge in the fact that the teachings this weekend can help you change your behavior in order to really protect yourself and truly help other beings. Next, think a little bit about bodhicitta. Think of someone you know who is having trouble, mental or physical, possibly emotional pain. Think how much you would like to be able to help them and grow that feeling in your heart. Invite your holy being to come and meditate with you. They sit in the air, a full-length prostration away from you, life-size, smiling, happy you're doing this practice. They're about eye level. Now mentally prostrate, thanking them for their good qualities. Remembering that a prostration is a sign of thanks, not a sign of submission. Now make them an offering. A really nice one is some part of your practice you did well today or yesterday, for those who stayed up pretty late. Not getting mad, perhaps, irritated in traffic, letting someone go in front of you at the store because they're agitated and in a hurry, catching yourself before you get annoyed at someone texting or using a tablet while they're driving. Now make a confession. Regret a wrong deed you've done in the last 24 hours. Replay the incident, the mental video, and determine to try hard not to do it again for a reasonable amount of time. You don't want to lie to yourself and say you'll never do it again, and then tomorrow you do it again. Then you've lied to yourself. I usually give myself a day, and then I make that into a week if I can handle the day. Now tell them a specific goodness that you did and be happy about it. Rejoice in the fact that you did something good for yourself or somebody else, and that you did it with wisdom, knowing that it's setting the seeds for something like that to happen for you in the future. Doing something nice for someone is very sweet, but if you do it and dedicate it to your future enlightenment, it makes it much more powerful, and you're rejoicing with wisdom instead of just rejoicing. Ask them for teachings, both formal and informal. The informal ones would be where someone irritates you and you realize it's a chance to practice what we've been teaching. And you don't get mad. You, in fact, want to thank them for giving you a chance to practice. Ask the teachers to stay, pray for their long lives, and continued involvement with us. Okay, shift around if you need to just a bit, and then we'll do the meditation. You find yourself at the edge of a thick, dark forest, looking out into a clearing that has a building. If you've done the Source of All My Good meditation, this is the same building, but from the eastern side. It's an adobe building, has clay tiles on a roof, solid, sturdy building. There is a moat in front of it and an arched wooden bridge across the moat. Between the moat and the building is a beautiful meadow with flowers and tall grass. Between you and the moat is a clearing. You've been struggling through this thick, dark forest without a trail for a very long time. You are tired from having carried a heavy backpack that contains all of your possessions. Things are even strapped to the outside because you have so much stuff that you feel you cannot live without. The stuff hanging off the outside of your pack has caught branches and has made the trip very hard. Your arms and face are all scratched up. You are hot, you are tired, and you are thirsty, let alone hungry. You notice in the near clearing a farmer's market with lots of people and vendors selling produce and crafts. You see an outdoor cafe and start to move through the crowd towards it. As you move through the crowd, people start to grab on what's on the outside of your pack. This is like someone living life in denial of their inevitable death. We constantly struggle to get what we want or think we need. We struggle to protect our stuff from people that think they need it. We use up our good karma and create negative karma without a moment's hesitation. This is our image of the problem of not meditating on death. The stuff in the backpack represents all our unnecessary possessions, relationships, inaccurate beliefs, and opinions. Perhaps the canteen strapped to the outside of the pack is a big house mortgage that you're struggling to get out from under. You really shouldn't have purchased it, but everybody really thinks it's cool you have it. It's a status symbol. The flashlight could be your fancy car. You're making payments, exorbitant payments on it, but everybody thinks it's cool that you have a Tesla. The bedroll represents that friend that just likes to go to the bar and waste time arguing politics. Without meditating on death, we'll never come to see how useless and petty most of what we really do is, and hence we perpetuate this cycle of life, samsara. You break out of the crowd thinking that there is something wrong with this picture. I cannot go on like this. Something has to change. You go to the cafe and order a cold drink. You sit down, you sip your drink, and you find yourself thinking about, maybe I'll go back and just check the farmer's market. There might be something I could use. You resist the temptation, you pay for your drink, and walk towards the bridge. You move to the high point at the center of the bridge. The bridge represents the benefit of doing a good death meditation. You put your backpack down and open it. You start to throw items over the bridge railing, identifying them as you do so, and sincerely saying good riddance. I used to watch the early morning news before I went to work. I would watch the news at 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock, and 11 o'clock. I'd read 2 news magazines, and I had 2 newspaper subscriptions. Those are the things I'm throwing out. That was excessive, a waste of my time when I could have been studying the Dharma. By dispensing things out of your backpack that represent wasted, useless activities, you're starting to get the idea of being able to focus your attention on what's really important. You pick up your pack and continue across the bridge, having gotten rid of those things without regret. And that's the key. You can't have regret. If you have regret, this isn't working properly. Now you're over the bridge. The backpack is quite light, but you're still dirty, hot, and tired. You look ahead and you see a gauntlet of armed guards that you must pass through before you make it to the building. They are menacing and they are scary. They represent another kind of death meditation where you would practice the terror and panic of death. Knowing this, you muster your remaining strength and courage and run right past them before they can react. Magically, you find yourself in a peaceful meadow, refreshed, clean, your backpack's gone, you are carefree and you skip towards the building door. You find yourself standing in front of a yellow door on the building's east side. The door represents the start of the correct kind of death meditation, the one that will result in you becoming totally unencumbered by any unnecessary things in life. The meditation, you know, where you're doing the most important thing you can do. And if you died at any moment, you could do so without regrets or attachment. On the yellow door is a sign that says death is certain. Okay, with your eyes still closed, recall your holy being. Ask them to come and stay in your heart to guide you throughout the day. They are happy to do so. They shrink down to 3 inches in size, rise up, turn the face the way you are, and come to the top of your head. Shrinking down to the size of a pea, and then the size of a period, and magically descend into your central channel to the center of your heart. They stay in your heart and their love and compassion radiate throughout your body. Anytime you need them, they are there to help. So it's a good thing to dedicate after a meditation like this. So by the goodness of what we've just done, may all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the 2 ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. Okay. I'm going to see if we can pull off this sharing a little bit cleaner than we did yesterday. Okay. Okay. Is that sharing? Good.
Yes.
Okay. Here we go. So I'm not as dumb as I thought I was. Okay. So the class 2. Now what's going on? There we go. Lists of suffering. I happen to like lists. That's maybe why I like the Galupa practice. So I'm not going to give you lots of lists. That's actually my next project after I get this final manuscript for the military. I'm going to start my project I've had for many years in the back of my mind, the Tibetan Book of Lists. It's going to be quite an undertaking. We used to study when we were in the car together, driving somewhere like the Diamond Mountain. My wife would look at me and say, give me a list of 2. And I'd say the 2 sufferings. And I'd say to her, give me a list of 7. She'd go, sevenfold cause and effect. I'd say, then she'd say, give me a list of 10. And I'd say the 10 sufferings of the human realm. And we'd go on and on like that. That's what old married couples that are Dharma partners do for fun. Okay, list of suffering. The list of 2, the suffering of this life, suffering of death. That's pretty straightforward. Suffering of suffering, obvious pain, suffering of change. I like to describe that as you have ice cream and then it's gone. I mention ice cream a lot. I really like ice cream. Suffering of change, pervasive suffering. This is interesting. I teach this in 2 different ways. Usually, a pervasive suffering is the idea that you're dying the minute you're born. And as I mentioned in last class, most of these men think they're immortal till maybe they get to be 30 and start having a family and realize they have to be more careful. I don't remember worrying about death pretty much at all during my life so far. The pervasive suffering, I think, is more, pervasive, is you don't know what karma is going to ripen next. I don't know what karma is going to ripen next. So it's a challenge to me. It's a game. But that seems to be more pervasive. That permeates my life. Every second of every day, there's a karma ripening that I had no idea was in my back pocket. I had no idea I inconvenienced this many people to warrant my having something inconvenience to me, Parkinson's. But I must have been a real doozy of an inconveniencer. 4 sufferings: birth, old age, sickness. The reason old age comes before sickness, I believe, is because in your youth, sickness isn't a challenge. In your old age, sickness can lead pretty quickly to death. 6, nothing is fixed. Nothing is you're never satisfied. I have a new printer. It's a really nice printer, except when we get a nearby lightning strike, it goes offline And it takes a call to Hewlett Packard to get it back online. So it went from being a really nice printer to kind of an annoying printer that is a challenge to use. You shed your body over and over. You work hard to make it in good shape, physically good shape. You eat carefully, you do yoga, you do everything right. Then you have to give it up when you die. You're reborn again and again. There's the high and the low. I kind of think that's the same as nothing is fixed. And the last one is very important in the classes we're going to be doing. You die alone. Oops. Whoops again. There we go. 8. Born. You're born. Old age, sickness, death. You encounter things we don't like. We lose the things we do like. Try to get things we want but can't have. I think that's only 7. Lastly, the 10 sufferings of the human realm. Hunger and thirst. When I bless the food at dinner, one of my blessings is we all sentient beings have safe water to drink, safe food to eat, and a safe place to sleep. When you stop and think about it, we live in houses, apartments, whatever. We go to bed, we're pretty sure we're not going to have anybody in the house we don't want in the house. You don't go to bed hungry. You don't go to bed thirsty. And think of all the people that do. What a suffering. Body decays gradually. Now tell me about it. Always separated from the things you love. Things you don't like happen to you. You can't get what you want, but you can get things you don't want. And birth, sickness, old age, and death. This is all on a slide that I'll be sending you after class, so don't worry about writing it down. I just like lists, and I think this is a nice set of lists. Okay, we're going to be talking about renunciation a little bit more. So how do you know you have renunciation? Well, if you've taken the 3 principal paths, the ACI 1, you memorize the 3 principal paths, which I highly recommend doing, then there's no way to end without pure renunciation, this striving for pleasant results in the ocean of life. It is because of their hankering for life as well that beings are fettered. So seek renunciation first. Leisure and fortune are hard to find. Life's not long. Think it constantly. Stop desire for this life. Think over and over how deeds and their fruits never fail, and the cycle of suffering. Stop desire for the future. When you have meditated thus and feel not even a moment's wish for the good things of cyclic life, and when you begin to think both night and day of achieving freedom, you have found renunciation. So let me see what else I want to say. An easy start to your renunciation practice is checking in to see if what you're doing is the best you can do. There's nothing wrong with watching a movie to relax, but maybe to try to choose a movie more often than not that has some Dharma perspective. My wife likes us to try and find angel movies. I happen to like action movies. Try and find an action movie with a angel in it. There are not very many of them, unless you think Bruce Willis is an angel. But we do that. We have We get together usually in the evenings after she's finished classes and I've finished working on a book project. We'll sit down and I'm in charge of the controller because she gets upset when it doesn't work the way she wants. So we sometimes we ask the TV by voice command for angel movies. And some of the responses we get make absolutely no sense. So in some ways, I'm not worried about AI taking over the world. If they can't interpret my needs for a movie, I'm not too worried they're going to take over the world. Know that you're trying to renounce things and work slowly but surely, then perhaps pick up the pace. I like pro football. I limit myself to one game on Sunday, unless the 49ers are playing and the Kansas City Chiefs, and maybe I'll watch two. But if I'm watching, I'm doing something else, focusing more of my attention on the something else than on the games. I don't spend, well, I do have a bad habit. Well, I try not to do this, but it sucks me in. I don't know how many of you watch animal things on YouTube, but boy, once you get started watching kittens play or parrots talk, you can waste a lot of time. Just one more. It's 12:30 and I need to get to bed. So the bridge, the forest, the bridge, and the gauntlet are looking at our renunciation and our wrong views of death, the benefits of a proper attitude towards death, letting go of what's apparently comfortable, and realize that real comfort is in spiritual progress. No matter where along the Dharma ladder you are, unless you're at the top, we need to be willing to let go of the comfortable and move up and on, making room for new practices. That doesn't mean you can't watch movies. It doesn't mean you can't read a good novel. It doesn't mean you can't go shopping. Just do everything in moderation, except for your Dharma practice. Grow that. The time you don't spend at the mall, spend more time on your Dharma practice. Because as I think I've said earlier, you don't have a morning practice. You have a 24-hour, 24/7 practice. You may have your practice on your cushion in the morning, but to say you've done your practice in the morning is missing the point. So now we're ready to enter the building. This is the start of the journey that will use individual rooms and corridors to help us remember the 3 steps and the 3 subpoints. So here are the 3 main points and the 9 subpoints. Death is certain. The time of death is uncertain. And only the Dharma can help. So death is certain. When your time comes, you go. My wife had a receptionist, a wonderful lady, and she wasn't feeling so good one day. So she went to the doctor. For some reason, they did surgery on her, opened her up, and she was riddled with cancer and died about a week later. She went from being a cheerful, wonderful receptionist in a matter of a week to being dead from massive cancer. When your time comes, you go. Your karma, you die when your karma for this life runs out. I don't know how many of you remember Jim Henson. He was the guy who developed the Muppets, very famous show. We used to love watching that. He went into the hospital in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, with an infection, thinking it would be no big deal. He'd just be in the hospital for a few days. He'd get some antibiotics and he'd be home. The infection went systemic and he died in the hospital. going into a hospital, well, I'll be out in a few days. I must admit, every time I've gone into a hospital, it never occurred to me I'm not going to come out. I do have one kind of funny story. Oh, I thought it was funny. So during 3-year retreat, I was walking up a hill. For those of you that have been to Diamond Mountain, you know the hill at the Sky Dome. I was walking up that hill carrying about 30 pounds of tools during a break in between our retreats, deep retreat sessions. Was going up to repair a leak that had been reported. As I was walking up the hill, I could barely go more than 50 feet without just running out of energy. I didn't get dizzy. I just didn't have any energy. So I'd stop, breathe, feel better, walk another 50 feet. And I got up there, did the work I needed to do, came down the hill, no problem, started walking up the remaining hill to our cabin, had the same problem. So I talked to my lovely wife, who's a retired PA, and we decided it might be cold-induced asthma because I had had a history of that and it was a cold day. But it was the next day was a delivery day, and they decided it was a good idea for me to go out. So I'm sitting on a log, having not seen anybody for, oh golly, nearly 3 years. And one of the support staff comes up and asks why I'm sitting on the log waiting. And I explain to him. And I say, I feel pretty good. I just have this weird energy thing. And he goes, you look like hell. We're going to the hospital right now. So we went to the hospital. And I remember, I haven't seen anybody for 3 years. I was okay with that. I cried a little bit. It was obviously something was wrong with me. They get me in the hospital. They put me on an emergency room exam table. They take some blood samples. And I'm sitting there. Now, my wife hasn't come out. She stayed in retreat. So for all she knows, I'm on my way to die. Doesn't have a cell phone. So I'm laying there feeling actually pretty reasonable. And I hear a voice go, 3,000. I've never heard of anything over 300. And I thought, so some poor guy's in real trouble. Well, a few minutes later, the doctor comes in with his eyes the size of silver dollars. And he looks at me and says, Mr. Stumpf, you should be dead. To which I thought, well, that's some bedside manner. So I said, well, what's going on? And he said, you have a D-dimer of 3,000. That means you have massive blood clots in your body. So that got my attention. But I said, can I get up and walk around? Because I want some exercise. And he goes, absolutely not. You stay right where you are. We're going to try and get you to the hospital. They wanted me out of there. So long story short, and the reason I'm telling this story is I get to Tucson. I get to the hospital. They're doing some tests. And I have to go. They put a bottle of oxygen on my gurney and move me down to get a CAT scan. Then they come back and they forget to put me on house oxygen. So I start to go unconscious because the oxygen in the bottle has run out. And I hear him say, we're losing him. So they put me on the house oxygen. I thought it was really funny. I started laughing. They looked at me like, what is wrong with you? So they didn't have to do any surgery. I ended up getting back into retreat. But it's as simple as not putting me back on the oxygen. That could have killed me. The blood clots should have killed me. You just don't know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. Death is not self-existent, and you have to grasp this if you want a good death meditation. There's a concept Geshe talks about called dirty good karma. The karma that makes samsaric life is called dirty good karma, meaning that it is a pleasant thing that runs out. It comes from doing deeds ignorantly. It's not that it's not good karma, it runs out. If you do it with wisdom, with understanding the concept of emptiness, then the karma is much more powerful and it doesn't run out. But most of what we do in this life is dirty good karma because it runs out. We can all make the good karma resulting in accumulation of merit, which is what makes a Buddha. But remember, nothing can influence the karma once ripened. The doctor stops my blood clot. My karma for death has not changed. It just means my karma for dying from a blood clot has worn out. Now, if you know the 4 laws of karma, you know that at the end, the last law says the karma must ripen. But if you know the 4 powers of purification, which we're not going to get into today, you know you can damage the karmic seed so it doesn't ripen to the full extent. But it still must ripen. What's the proof of our karma for life running out? We see people die. Things wear out, and death is just the simultaneous wearing out of all the karmas that were projected for your life. So karma, deeds done in this life can ripen in the next life, or in a future life. These realities are the basis for Tantra, to make Tantra karma in this life that will ripen in this life and prevent death. That's the whole point of Tantra. But that takes intensive study and teachings. So how can we possibly fight this battle with karma? Well, luckily we have some tools. But first, you can't add time to your life. The story of Neil Armstrong, for those of you that are not Americans and follow the space program, Neil Armstrong was the first man to walk on the moon. Now, back in the day when they were training, most all the astronauts were known for their physical exercise, jogging, running all the time. And one day in a news interview, Neil Armstrong was asked if he did any extracurricular running. And he looked at the reporter and said, "Son, I have only so many heartbeats. I'm not wasting them on any more jogging than I need to." So this man goes to the moon, stays on the surface for whatever time, comes back, has been a military test pilot, comes back, gets a job as a civilian engineering professor at, I think it was Ohio State. He's getting off a bus. His wedding ring catches on the bus door, and it rips off the skin off his fingers, his ring finger on his left hand. He survived going to the moon and all the dangers fraught with that. He survived being a military test pilot and all the dangers with that. He survived having to eject from a lunar module training apparatus that should have killed him. So what happens? He catches his wedding ring on a door and it strips the skin off his finger. You have no time to practice while you're alive. That brings up something called the three moralities. Restrain from doing bad deeds, work hard to do only good deeds, do 1 and 2 with the motivation to help all living beings. If you did nothing else in your Dharma career but followed these three moralities, you'd be in pretty good shape. First, restrain from doing bad deeds of any kind, work hard to do only good deeds, and then do 1 and 2 with the motivation to help all living beings. It's often been said, in fact, I think Ken Rinpoche says in the book, The Three Principal Paths, if there was one book that you could have on a deserted island, that book, because it's a condensed Lam Rim, could get you to enlightenment. So that's my ad for memorizing the Three Principal Paths. I know a lot of students that go to countless initiations and practice none of them. It's more important to go to a few of Geshe Michael's teachings and practice what he's teaching you than it is to go to all of them and not practice them. Richard Gere, the famous American actor, is one of His Holiness's personal students. And I remember one day we were at a talk given by His Holiness in Pauli Pavilion with hundreds of people in the audience. And Richard Gere was there, and His Holiness said, I'm happy to report that Richard Gere is finally following what I've been teaching him. So I was kind of embarrassed for Richard Gere. Don't collect practices. Practice practices. That seems pretty obvious, but I think you'd be surprised how many people you know have tons of initiations. I have a Yamantika initiation, I have Vajragini, and I have Wat Tara. I don't have a ton of other initiations. It doesn't mean it's bad to have them, but if you're going to have them, practice them. Okay, I think that's the end of the slides. Let's end the slideshow. Okay, I'll stop sharing. That worked out pretty well. Okay, let's take a break till 1, so 10-minute break, and we're going to do a short additional meditation. What I've tried to do, this has turned out to be more complicated than I thought, but what I've tried to do is take yesterday's meditation. We reviewed it, the first one. Now we're adding a new one. And tomorrow we'll take the one we added today and use it first, and then we'll add another one and another one. So that's the plan. So go ahead and take a break. If you have questions, you can go ahead and ask them now if you'd like. I'll stay on.
I have a question. In this, what you just showed, the last slide, when you say you have no time to practice while you are alive, I don't understand that. While we are alive, we can practice. So why it says you have no time to practice while you're alive?
You talk yourself out of practice. You say, oh, it's too late. I don't have time. I need to go do this. I need to go do that.
It's like an excuse. Okay.
Instead of prioritizing. Now I have this pet peeve myself. If I make a commitment, that supersedes pretty much anything else that comes down the road. And I've gotten a little bit of static from Geshe Michael. he's never said anything to me, but I've heard from some of his staff that he's surprised I don't do some things with him. If I have a commitment to teach on a Thursday and he asks me to come up for something up in Sedona, if I can, I do. But if my commitment to teach has to be, I have to call all my students and say, no, I can't teach. I have to go see Geshe Michael. I think it's a test of my idea of commitment. I could be wrong. It could be the wrong thing to do. But if I want people to honor their commitments to me, I have to honor commitments to them, whether they be students or friends. This doesn't happen very often, but it's happened occasionally. I'm not pleased by it. I'm pleased that I've upheld my commitment, but I've let my Lama down. I don't enjoy doing that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, I have a commitment to Louisa to generate a document for her. And Louisa, that's turned out to be much harder than I thought it was going to be. But I will get something to you very soon.
If I can support you, let me know.
I will. I found in projects like that, I just have to get the right thought process going. Then it comes pretty quickly. But with all this, I had some massive computer problems between class and now, first class and now, that I had to struggle with. But I'm pleased to say I did not get mad at my computer. I did get mad at me, but which is interesting because getting angry at me is still getting angry and still setting the seeds to see angry people in my future. So stop getting angry. Well, if there are no more questions, I'll sign off for just a minute. You find yourself standing in front of the yellow door to the adobe building. On the door it says, "Death is certain." You open the door, it swings left into the room. It's very important that the doors always open to the left. That's setting seeds for your tantric practice. You step in, it's cool inside, but it's dark. You see the room is circular. You shut the door. You hear a sound to your right. A large, vicious animal. Could be a dog, could be a tiger, a cat of some kind. All you know, it has large teeth and it lunges at you, but is restrained by a chain to be just out of reach of you. It is snarling and snapping, straining at the leash. If the leash breaks, you're toast. The circular room represents the wheel of life, and the snapping, vicious beast represents the Lord of Death. If he gets a hold of you, your death is a certainty. When your karma for this life wears out, it is as if the chain restraining the dog broke and you are toast. You back away from the dog, the beast, thankful that he was restrained. You move to the center of the room and you see a large hourglass standing on the table, waist high. The opalescent sand is flowing down quickly. And for me, it's more than halfway down since I'm 70 and in the latter part of my lifespan if things don't change. The hourglass is a sign of your life leaking away. It's affixed to the table. You can't turn it over. Nothing can stop the flow. Your life is continuing to run out. You look beyond the table and you see a corridor leading from the room. You have a sense of urgency since your life is slipping away. So you run toward the corridor, but you stop because you see along the walls on both sides all the different teachers you have had, the teachings you've attended. You haven't had time to do most of the practices. You want desperately to stop and look at them and do them now. But with the hourglass running, your time is running out. This represents never enough time to study. But the irony is, it's not that there's not enough time. You're occupying it with things other than the Dharma. And as we discussed earlier, there's nothing wrong with relaxing, but put it in perspective. It's like anything else, done in moderation. This corridor can be quite short if you're new to Buddhism. It can be quite long if you've had many initiations and many teachings. For instance, on the wall could be the certificates you've gotten for the completion of ACI courses. So you stop looking and you start running again because you realize your time is running out. you come to a green door with a sign that says, time of death is uncertain. Okay. So next class, we'll start with this brief meditation and add another corridor. And we add a corridor each class until we get to the end. Now, I'd like to have you do the entire meditation, put both getting to the yellow door and up to the green door. I'd like you to do that before 7 o'clock class. You should be able to listen to the recording and do that. I tell you what, I will cut and paste the written version of the meditation after we get done here, and I will send that with a package that I give to Ale to send to you. I'll do that, and then you can read it. But I'd really like to have you do it at least once before the next class. So I thank you for the opportunity to teach you this very important material. It's a blessing for me to have students request it. So let's dedicate. Actually, I'd like to read a dedication, a different dedication. Then we get to that. Where did it go? Yes, I won't. Okay. We'll do the standard dedication. By the goodness of what I've just done, may all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. Okay, we'll see everybody at 7 my time. I'm going to bed. Thank you
Thank you very
again.
much.
Be safe, and we'll see you in 6 hours. Bye-bye.
Yeah, good night.
Thank you for
Bye.
teaching.
You're welcome. My pleasure. I wish I could read the Russian. I wonder if I can do translation. Does a translator work on the transcript?
Oh.
No. Rat. Oh, well. Okay. Bye-bye.